Ba-ba-da-ba.
Bum. Oh, they were on
Hello,
quick.
gang. Hello, hello. Hello again. Hello. It's Neil
All
Di.
right. Let's rock and roll. What's happening, Charles?
Well, it's
Woo.
uh it's one of those things, boy. It's one of those things. I tell you that today was a very large number. So again, we have to look a couple days back. But again, I just want to make sure everybody is safe, right?
Large number
Everybody.
in cases and large number in of deaths. 12 deaths today. 7 yesterday. I don't know. I think we've had over 60 in the last week or so.
Wow.
And 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 our leaders are bragging on the news that the hospital beds are less jackasses. You're proud of that because you opened up the beds because people died. I mean, it just makes me nauseous, Charlie. I hate to start off on the wrong foot, but it makes me nauseous when you can go up there and take credit when we are falling apart. This state is falling apart. And you can go up there and say, oh, we know, right? We talked about this the other night on Mondays and Tuesdays, we get the weekend surge. This week, because of the Labor Day weekend, we had a third day that was slow. And they go up there and they pat themselves on the back that the numbers are dropping, numbers of hospital beds are dropping because people are dying. And I posted that today. Deaths is not a strategy for opening up hospital beds. No, the strategy is to prevent people from getting sick, prevent virus from coming to the state, prevent virus from spreading. Prevention, not reaction. And the state, Charlie, has been reactive since day one. Take that back. In the beginning, we were proactive.
Yep.
And then when the visitor dollar, the tourism industry became the priority, then we became a very reactive state. Till today, reactive. Yes,
Yep.
I'm upset.
Well, that's what makes you and I the yin and the yang. Because I get a hard time getting upset early. I only can laugh. I mean, I don't mean to laugh to discredit anybody. We all have certain triggers. But today being September 11th, I first would like to give my respect to all of the survivors of those that perished on that day 20 years ago. They lost their lives. And that's what started our country to become engaged in wars and so forth and so forth. And I just like to extend my deepest condolences. And I think maybe that's the reason why when I posted this morning, I really miss my daddy. I tell you, I never thought in my wildest dreams. I'm pretty hardcore, but for some reason I missed him, and I think I posted and thank you to all the comments and the kind words. I'm one of those that as time goes by, I start to lose the image of him in my head. So someone said, "Do you have any photos?" And I've got I've got just one good one of him that I keep close to me, and that's the only one I look at. But there's that selfish side of me that wants him to say something. I can look at that photo all day, just wishing he would just say something. And the shoulda, coulda, woulda. So for you folks out there, I even took care of my mom leading up to the time she passed. You make the best that you can with your parents. your children, because tomorrow is never promised. Tomorrow is never promised. I don't think anybody in the wildest dream 20 years ago thought they were going to go to work and not come home. The family thought they weren't going to come home. And it's sad. It's sad. And so is with this virus now. You know, we have so many bright minds, talented doctors, but sometimes there are those that just cannot be saved. And I don't think anyone ever thought they would go into the hospital and not return, come back home. So I think we gotta malama each other a little more. We gotta try a little more harder. And you know, it was just one of those days I was melancholy all day. I went into work. I looked at the employees on a Saturday, and I was just so proud of them because I'm sure they wanted to be home, but they were there working hard. And despite some of the negativities about the visitor industry, I gotta say the employees of the airport, that's security, that's VIP services, rental cars, everybody, they still go to work begrudgingly in some ways, but with a smile on their face because they represent Kauai, and I'm very proud to see that. So I just wanted to thank all the employees today. Wanted to thank them.
Yeah, 9/11, man. You got New York, you got the Twin Towers, you got Hurricane Iniki, a lot of devastation on 9/11s in the past. So yeah, Charlie, thanks for bringing that up. Prayers to all the families, all the first responders, and all the emergency personnel that have to respond to that thing, and so much devastation in both of those. Of course, the Twin Towers, 9/11, over 3,000 people. But the 9/11 and the hurricane was beyond our control. As we talk about that analogy all the time about the hurricane, right? The hurricane comes and then it goes, and then we rebuild. And with COVID, it's different, right? Because it doesn't go away. It keeps getting worse.
We don't even have a chance to come up for air.
Right. But we have a choice in how we handle it and how we deal with it.
Mhm.
See, if there was a way humanly possible to create a diversion for the hurricane, then and the hurricane would never hit, it'd be a good thing. And while we really couldn't stop the virus from coming. There's so much more we can do. And Dr. Brilliant, I don't know if you saw Dr. Larry Brilliant on KITV the other night, an epidemiologist, world renowned, came on and he said, he was surprised that Hawaii forgot forgot how to do what it takes to stop the virus from entering the state. He was talking about the testing. Just a couple nights ago. This guy is again world renowned. We're gonna try to get him on the show. But he worked with our state leadership early on, and he was very impressed with how we handled COVID in the beginning, when we required quarantines and testing. And he said Hawaii leaders, he specified that, he said Hawaii leaders have seemed to forgotten what it took. Oh, hang on. Let's see, Darragh. Well, did I give him the wrong number? I must have given him the wrong number. Oh, shucks.
Well,
I did it again, Charlie.
well, we're only human, but that's why we. But again, there's. I had made mention when we were off air, and this is for our viewers. It's funny how they promote the vaccine. Right now, they're promoting the vaccine, pushing the vaccine. And yet, there are some that cannot take the vaccine for medical reasons, right? And there are some that are just dead set against it. Okay, I get it. But then we know from just constant studies shows that now there are more vaccinated people getting the virus. And they've always said it's not going to stop you from getting it. It's going to just lessen the symptoms. So I've always said, maybe we shouldn't be promoting that, because you can get people getting the vaccination and they say it lessens the symptoms. And that's why they're going to have this haphazard attitude, because, yeah, I'm going to get the virus, but I'm not going to end up in the hospital. But they forget, what about the person next to them, the good friend that never get vaccinated yet? I understand. We're trying to get them into the corridor to get vaccinated. So it's a two-edged sword, put it that way. Two-edged sword.
Aloha, Dr. O'Carroll, Dr. Darragh O'Carroll. Mahalo. Sorry, I just got diagnosed with FFS a couple of weeks ago. And so it hurts every time it messes with me every time I work on the computer or the phone. It's that fat finger syndrome.
Oh,
so so I hit the wrong stupid code. But thank you for jumping on tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Lots going on, man. I see you've been around. I see you on CNN. I see you on, I think you're on KITV. I forget which one's already. You've been all over though, and trying to share some information that continuously gets ignored. But today's big day again. 800 plus cases, 12 more deaths. What's your thoughts, Doc?
I almost don't have much to say. I was trying to think about what, because you usually open up these shows with us giving our thoughts, and I was like, I don't really know what to say, to be quite honest. Maybe it's a combination of, Charlie, you were talking about the significance of today, 20 years ago. I was waking up, I remember, at 6 a.m. to go to, it was his senior year of high school, and the TV was on, and my parents just had their jaws dropped, and I had no idea what was happening. And went to school, and we had a big assembly, and there was a plane going over, and like everybody's immediate reaction is like, where's that plane going? So hats off, and my condolences to everybody who's been affected by that tragic day. Maybe that's kind of coloring how I feel a bit today, but also like yesterday there was 3,200 deaths in the United States, which is the same amount of deaths roughly that occurred 20 years ago due to a violent terrorist attack. And it's just normalized, and it's just a statistic now. And every number has a family attached to it, a personal life, goals, dreams, and wishes. And so I guess that just hurts to hear.
Doc, let me ask you something. In what it appears that the state is doing now, because they're just letting this thing chug along, right? And they're hoping that more people can get vaccinated. But you heard me say that there's going to be some that are just dead set on not getting vaccinated, and I can only hope and pray that they can outrun this thing, don't get too close to it, because it seems more and more it's just jumping on whoever it can jump onto. And so, do you think what the state is doing now, that's their plan of herd immunity? Just let it go, and those who are vaccinated will get it, but they won't get the real bad symptoms. And those who are not vaccinated, they'll get it really bad and possibly die. And the numbers just dwindle from there. Does it look like that's what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy, without having talked to any of them about what their strategy is from an outside perspective, it seems to be just, let it rip, to be quite honest. And let's vaccinate as many as we can, which I agree with. Absolutely. Vaccines decrease the rates of hospitalization, how long people are infectious to other people. There's no reason not to vaccinate unless you've got a severe allergy to something in the vaccine. But other than that, what I feel is consistent with Hawaii's strategy really until for the last year and a half has always been 6 months behind, and I was doing a lot of research lately about what's the consensus that a new variant or something is going to arrive. Yes, no, maybe, and it's overwhelmingly yes, it just when. And so the reason why Delta has become the predominant variant is that it transfers and transmisses between people so much quicker. There's some other variants like the alpha, beta, excuse me, not alpha, but beta and gamma that have some immune escape. But so far, Delta doesn't have as much of immune escape. Alpha was more like Delta in that it transmitted quicker. And so that's what made it become a bit more fit, or quite a bit more fit than the other variants. But what happens when Delta is the new baseline? You know, what happens when that becomes not only severely transmissible, but also has some immune escape? And right now, it doesn't have to, it's not under selective pressure to do that. But there's enough unvaccinated immune systems to hop around. But once there becomes a predominant amount of people that have antibodies to this, that's when the selective pressure, you know, just like what Darwin talked about hundreds of years ago, there's now evolutionary pressure for this virus to move to different ways. And it's going to, is the overwhelming consensus. And if our only strategy is to use the current vaccines, then we're right back where we were.
Yeah, it's, you know, I don't know if they have a strategy. I noticed that there is a lot of effort and a lot of energy put into the vaccine passports, you know, the mandates. I was talking to Charlie before you came on, you might have heard. The whole motivation is to get people vaccinated, which, like you said, I agree. And I think we all should get vaccinated, absolutely. But that is one preventive measure. But everything else is reactive. I mean, we're not responding, or I shouldn't say, we're not acting in a way to prevent the virus. We're not doing anything with travel, and it's consistently left out of the discussion. I don't know if you noticed this, I'm sure you have, but no matter who's speaking at the state level, no matter what radio station or TV station, no matter what interview with star advertiser, they do not touch, unless they're asked, rarely they're asked about the travel, and they'll just say, hey, only 1 or 2% of the travelers or visitors are in the hospital. And we're not talking about visitors, we're saying travelers. But they conveniently leave that out of any discussion. It's always about the passports. It's always about posting vaccinated against not vaccinated. But we should be really focusing on trying to limit virus coming in. Dr. Brilliant, I don't know if you know Dr. Brilliant or if you heard him speak on KITV, he made it very clear that that's the direction we should be looking at. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of him before, but I mean, he said some very apt and poignant things. Is that I think what a lot of us have been trying to point out is that it's a 6-lane highway, you know, when you open everything up like this. And if you look at the history of influenza in the States, you know, Hawaii has the highest influenza mortality rate in the country, you know, higher than other states that have higher rates of obesity. You know, most of the states in the South, Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee, are the other states that are vying for the highest mortality rate. And they have almost double the rate of obesity that Hawaii does. And obesity predisposes to bad outcomes of both influenza and flu. And so we have, especially in 2017, I think we had like by far the highest mortality rate. And from 2015 and 2016, we had the highest. And then in 2018 and 19, we were only second to only Mississippi. But if you look at the Hawaii Department of Health's Influenza Surveillance Network website, which you showed a couple weeks ago, I believe, Mel, it says, and this was written years before this pandemic, is that our high volume travel contributes to a longer influenza season. And that just is something that is just, it's biology, right? The more opportunity a virus has to jump from person to person, it's going to take it, you know. And when you get something that's got a reproductive number of 1.2, 1.3, like seasonal flu, it gives Hawaii the highest influenza mortality rate in the country. Now, how is that going to be different with something that's as explosive as Delta? You know, I constantly am trying to figure out new ways and new angles to convince Hawaii to be, like you said, Mel, be more proactive and play some offense instead of constantly having to dig out from the 5-yard line. And it just never seems to happen.
Today we had a very sobering statistic on Kauai. 19 children, 18 adults, positive cases. Ours is real time. You won't see that on the state's numbers until for a couple of days, but we had 19 kids and 18 adults. First time that the number of positive kids surpassed the number of adults. That is freaking scary. And yet we still have done nothing to isolate our kids or protect our kids from the virus. I'm really, really, really worried about that. You know, you talked about the influenza flu. When kids go to school, that's where it spreads a lot, at schools. It just does. That's just what happens in school. But this COVID is horrible. And to see them overtake the adult numbers is quite frightening for me. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I think that's scary. That says something about this Delta.
Yeah, no, it's nothing that we want. I mean, we don't want to see anybody contract this virus, but so far to date, all the previous variants could definitely affect children, but we're seeing roughly the same amount of hospitalizations with Delta. About 1% of children who are detected to have the Delta variant end up being hospitalized. And that's a significant number. And if they're young kids, how terrifying it is to be in the hospital. Things that I think need to be implemented are regular school testing, at least once to twice a week with some rapid tests. But there's a rapid test shortage, everywhere. I would love to have something like the UK or Germany does, where the UK, you get 5 rapid tests per week. And if you're going into a high volume, high traffic environment, you take that test before you get there. And so at least you have some comfort that you're not roaringly contagious to other people. And then Germany, you can buy a rapid test at the supermarket for, I think, like 83 euro cents. So that's what, 90 cents American. That's something that we should absolutely be shooting for.
Okay. Hey, Doc, let me ask you, and I brought this up a couple of nights ago in Misco, and I'm still of the opinion, because I want to do it. They talk about the booster, when the booster is available, and it basically boils down to, from what I understand, is the vaccine and the booster are the same thing, no different. So if they got so much of the vaccine available now, let's just go get the vaccine. I mean, if that's what we're talking about, right? Increasing our antibodies, right? Stimulating it and jacking it up, right? Instead of just waiting for the booster. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I think they'll probably have you on record, or they'll check records. I haven't tried to get basically the booster is a third vaccine shot for Pfizer, at least. Moderna, they're maybe
they're tweaking it a little, right?
Yeah, they're tweaking the milligrams or the dosage of how much vaccine is given. But yeah, essentially it is. And I don't know. I haven't tried. I haven't heard of anybody who's tried, so I don't know the ramifications or consequences. But theoretically, it's possible. Absolutely.
And the other thing too, I mean, if you think about it, they talk about this vaccine passport. I know Mel brought it up a little earlier. The only thing ineffective I think about that is because we know that the vaccine does not make you immune 100%. So basically, with your vaccine passport, all you're telling the proprietor, because they're being told they got to do this, is, I got vaccinated. But that's it. It doesn't say anything else beyond that. So to me, I think basically it's a waste of time, because it's like a false sense of security, that you've been vaccinated, okay. But what you need to do is you need to get, like you said, those rapid test kits, those rapid antigen test kits. I mean, I know here on Kauai, from what I've been told, the fire department has that. I believe they use the Binex Now. That's the Abbott, right? The Binex Now.
Yep. Yep.
And it's paid for by the county for those who do not want to get vaccinated. But hey, at least we know where they're at, right? At least they'll know where they're at. So I think that's what you were trying to say earlier. In order to fight this thing, you know, that's why you have mine detectors, to let you know where the damn mine is so you don't step on it. I mean, come on. And it seems almost idiotic that we know that we have this problem, yet everybody are sitting on the, you know, the ones that can make the decisions. And you can agree with me or disagree with me, but it sure looks to me like they're sitting on their hands and not doing anything other than that. I hear a lot of lip service, but that's about it, because there's a lot of things that we can be doing. And for the life of me, I don't know why we aren't doing it.
Yeah. On a hopeful note regarding vaccines, I read a study the other day about people who got the original SARS virus back in 2003. There's about 8,600 of them across the globe. When they got vaccinated with one of the mRNA vaccines, they had these kind of like super antibodies that that neutralized not only this coronavirus, but even the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, which is a pathogenic cousin of this virus, and then even the common cold coronaviruses. And so there's hope on the horizon regarding a universal coronavirus vaccine. And that would be ideal. And maybe even giving a vaccine that has not just coronavirus in it, or mRNA for this virus, but also RSV, which is another virus that's transferred and actually harms kids mostly, and then flu as well. So maybe you just get one sort of upper respiratory virus vaccine every winter. So there's some hope, and then also there's an oral medication in the works by Pfizer that I haven't seen robust data yet. I think they just only did a phase 1 or phase 2, but there may be by the end of the year something like Tamiflu, if anybody's ever taken Tamiflu, which isn't a terrific medication, but it does help. So hopefully something similar.
Any idea when the 12 and under vaccine will be ready? Or I'm sorry, under 12 vaccine. I heard something, it'll be soon. I think.
Yeah, I was hearing the end of September, but you know, I'm not in the large pharmaceutical and federal loops. So, but I'm hearing the same, Mel, somewhere around the end of September. Yeah.
And you're not in the government loop either, bro. You are in the same loop that we are in, and it's but I don't care. We're in the best loop. Real quick question. This is from Dana. Dr. Darragh O'Carroll, the free testing is being made available to schools, yet only half of the schools have opted in. What would you say to convince a principal to opt in to the free testing at schools?
Good question, Dana. I would point to, in Israel, there was a recent article that came out in one of their major digital news outlets, that I think 140,000 students in Israel were saved from being exposed because they caught 800 or 8,000 students who were positive. So they basically instituted, I apologize if it gets loud, it's raining here. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah. I thought it was an airplane, man. I got freaked out. Seriously, it sounded like a jet. It really did, man. I was like, oh my God, are you by the airport? But anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah, so Dana, I would point to other countries that have great experience from this and that are doing it, UK, Israel, and keep trying to promote student safety and also staff safety. And I think you can't go wrong by being an advocate in that sense.
Hey, Doc, also, why do you think with all, I mean, I want to be ginger when I say this, and I want to be, I don't want to be hardcore on it, but why do you think the state or the US, you know, we got so many countries, like you say, like Israel, like the UK, they're going leaps and bounds ahead to try to get ahead, because that's the name of the game, trying to get ahead of this virus. And there's so much data that comes out from them, and yet we just for some reason, we just don't want to act upon it. Why do you think? Why is that?
It is partially because the data systems here in the US are poor. Israel and the UK both have national health systems, and they're able to collect so much data. And I can't speak to why more of our state systems and our federal systems aren't entrusting that sort of data. But we've got such siloed medical care here. Everyone's on a different electronic health record that doesn't talk to another one, and even if it is an electronic health record or not, and it's just very fragmented. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be fixed. And a lot of people were calling for President Biden to help fix as well. It didn't seem to be addressed in his latest COVID package. So I think that would be a huge help, because we're kind of flying blind in the US with regards to like breakthrough vaccines or infections. We don't know how many of the CDC stopped tracking back in May, how many of the how many infections were breakthrough infections. But we know there's a huge percentage. If you just look at every other country, there's a huge percentage. We just don't know. And then, we just got to keep our eyes out. And I don't know the answer to that, Charlie. It's a great question, and somebody needs to answer for it.
I was actually quite dumbfounded when I found out. Okay, I mean, the first our first pandemic. Charlie and I both investigators, but I didn't realize that we were so ill-equipped to monitor the safety or the health situations across the country. I totally, if you would have, before this pandemic, if you would have said, Mel, I bet you $1,000, you just did multiple choice question, who had the best tracking system in the world? And you had us, you had UK, you had Israel. I would have bet my house that it would be us. I would have bet my house it would have been the United States of America had the best. I'm not in the medical field. I just assumed that our country, the United States of America, would have a system in place. And I'm sad to find out that we don't. That in fact, it's every man for himself, every state for yourself, every county. It's going to be hard to handle a pandemic of this size and this nature if in fact we don't have that information, that data, like Israel. It shouldn't be that way. We should be at least as up to speed as them, if not more. I'm shocked, actually.
Yeah, no, it was shocking. Shocking that in the very get-go of this pandemic that we didn't have the CDC and the FDA didn't have a test for us to use. I remember seeing a couple patients who I swore had this coronavirus back in March of 2020. They tested negative for flu because I could test them for that, but COVID and flu present very similarly. And I had no tests to get, I think there were 6 tests available per day in Hawaii or something like that. And it just, there was definitely a lot of stumbling blocks that were that we fell over in the beginning. And I think it's a good learning curve, because this is most people think this is far from over. I think we've got it's tough to say. Nobody really knows, but at least another 2 years, a year of this virus circulating, unless we can get something very, very effective, great vaccines, and get them deployed to everybody. It's tough to say when this virus is going to kind of evolve into something that's more like the common cold coronaviruses that kind of just give us some sniffles. The last one that did this was in the late 1800s. I think it was the OC43 common cold coronavirus strain. And who knows how long that's going to take. That was so long ago. That was 120 years. And so with our globe being so much more globalized, and then something I've been mentioning quite a bit too is if you just look at the last 2 decades, how many bad viruses kind of popped out. We had the original SARS, we had swine flu, bird flu, Ebola, now this one, Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. Yeah, there's gonna be something else, and flu is probably the most likely one. But yeah, not trying to be doom and gloom or anything. We got to be more prepared. That's all we're trying to emphasize.
So here's the ultimate, I think, and correct me when what I'm about to say, and that is, we have this issue with the governor's mandate that came out, right? Stating that state facilities, wherever, if you're vaccinated, you just got to show proof of you're vaccinated. If you are vaccinated with only one, you have to get tested until your second one comes in and you've been fully vaccinated for at least 2 weeks. Then you get those who are unvaccinated who has to test weekly. If we know that vaccinated people can be asymptomatic, why wouldn't we go and test both vaccinated and unvaccinated?
Yeah, true. That would probably be, and something that may shift out sometime in the future, and we just need to have more time, is how long is immunity lasting from vaccines or even from natural immunity? And the time frame is roughly 6 to 8 months. So I would say, and this is to infection, hospitalization, and severe COVID, thankfully, are still protective longer than then. We don't know how much longer yet, but we do know it's still ongoing. But just to contracting the virus and getting symptomatic COVID, probably 6 months. And so where I project that this may turn into is that, hey, look, if the current vaccines, and if things don't change, and things like we've been saying from the top of this show, things are likely going to change. But if things don't change, then there may be something like, hey, if your vaccine is more than 6 to 8 months old, then you should either get another one, or now you should be testing. I agree with you, Charlie. Like, if our goal is to completely limit spread, then that would be it. The other side of the token is that if everybody's vaccinated, then what you're trying to prevent is people getting so sick that they're going into the hospital. Now, if you take a certain subset of workers, like critical infrastructure workers, that Delta is, even if you have a breakthrough infection, and I've treated and treated some that have had breakthrough infections, it's not fun at all, even for young, healthy people. It's like, it really kicks their butt. And so if you've got like critical healthcare workers, you can't have them going out with bad virus for a week to 2 weeks, so I guess it may depend on, like, if it's really important state infrastructure workers, you maybe testing them even if they're vaccinated to keep them from being out from work may be a good idea.
Yeah, I can never understand. I understand testing capacity, the amount of tests available, but I mean, this whole thing about putting the vaccinated against unvaccinated, I think that needs to stop. I think the encouragement to get people vaccinated is a good thing, but I think we also got to be real with the people, because I think, like you just said, the fact that you're vaccinated, you get sick, it doesn't mean that you just get. Some of them get mild cases. Some unvaccinated people get mild cases of COVID, and in fact, asymptomatic just as well. Now the chances are much greater if you're to get sick and die if you're not vaccinated. We all know that, but they minimize it. And I think the messaging from the beginning was just to minimize this, and it gives people, like Charlie explained in his opening statement today, about how people are running around thinking, I got my shot, I'm not going to get real sick, and that may not be the truth. And rather than just be real with the people and let them know that, for the reasons why people should get vaccinated, and not make it so appealing and make it seem like you're going to be perfectly fine if you get the vaccine, because it will save lives, no doubt about it. It will save lives. But you don't want to get people so complacent that they go around and act dangerously. And I think we see a lot of that. We see a lot of that. And that behavior really needs to start. One of the interesting things about this vaccination passport program are the exemptions, Doctor. The exemptions that have been created, right? The airports, of course, airplanes, the courthouse, the luau's, visitor attractions. It makes no sense, Doc. We're over here telling our local people, you cannot do these things. You cannot have more than 10 people in your house. You cannot have more than 25 people out at, or whatever it is, 10 outside of your house, whatever it is. But the luau's are allowed to continue. The luau's with 300 to 400 guests to our state from areas that may be hot are allowed to continue. That messaging doesn't go well with our people, and it just creates this divide that's even worse. Or it's getting worse every single day. I don't know what you think about those types of gatherings. I think it's crazy. I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, anytime you give, especially a Delta virus that can hop from one person to 7 others almost, you're giving a lot. You're just pouring gasoline on a potential fire. 3, I didn't realize, I didn't hear, and I admittedly wasn't paying very close attention to the exemptions, but is luau's one of them, or guest attraction?
Yeah. They're still, if you are a commercial organized event, still going. I know for Kauai, we have one luau that does about 350 guests once a week, and we have another luau that does about 400 guests 3 times a week. And luau with a buffet.
Yeah.
That you scoop your own food, you share utensils. I don't know how it's still going on, but it is, and it's allowable. And that, I think, is where, it pisses me off. It pisses me off that it's happening. But again, it's the messaging, right? How do you expect the people to be happy?
Yeah.
When all of us that live in, it's retired already. But besides that, if you look at the medical issues about a congregation of that many people in that close quarters with that type of environment where people are singing and dancing and chanting and churches, similar to churches. How can we just ignore those events, but just harp on the local people that want to go spend a little barbecue in their backyard? That to me is beyond, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I don't get it either. And on a personal note, I'm trying to plan a wedding, and it's impossible at this point, and a little bit upsetting to hear that you can have luau's for as large as you want, but
go do it at the luau. You just call one of the hotels and just tell them you want to do it on their luau day. It's going to cost a little much, but at least you'll be able to do it legally.
I'm not so good at dancing, so that might not work. But
Charlie will teach you. Charlie will teach you. He's like Charlie's a.
Again, with this taking another round of vaccine, we just talked about it, right? And yeah, probably I'll be on record. But I'm on my 8th month since taking the vaccine last December on the 20th. But yet you don't hear any mechanisms in place, nor is there any enforcements on it. So, the only thing they can tell me is, no, we can't give it to you. And they don't have to give me a reason why. Now, the thing about it is, with the FDA giving full approval, that makes so they flip from an EUA, right, emergency use, to full approval. So does that mean that Pfizer now can charge whatever they want to charge for the vaccines? Because I know when it was an EUA, they couldn't charge.
Yeah, I don't know the finances. It may be that the U.S. government is no longer paying for it. That might be it. But don't quote me on that. I haven't really researched into it. I think the vaccines cost anywhere from $16 to $22, somewhere around there. But yeah, it may turn into that the insurance companies now have to pay for it, which I think they gladly will, rather than you getting sick and ending up in the hospital. Yeah.
Because what we're all faced with now, and I see this question popping up. It seems very, very, the state can say, oh, it's just a coincidence. But we all know that when the enforcement of those coming into the state stopped. That's when we slowly started to see the numbers just starting to ramp up, to the point that all they could say is it's community spread. So it's in the community and it's totally saturated. We had help from the government, from that Surgeon General. We commandeered the H3 tunnel. We did a surveillance test. But now when this thing running rapid, we can't do a surveillance test in a area where there's known clusters to see which direction this damn thing is going. So if we were to set up a perimeter on it and contain it, to me, that would be more effective at that point than allowing it to get out of the perimeter and start going into parts unknown and nobody's following it. Then all we would know is, as soon as somebody gets infected, did it come from a new source or did it come from the neighborhood just down the road where we should have been containing in the first place, right? So these are the kind of stuff that, from like someone like our background, all we do is investigate day in and day out. And, sometimes when we should be relaxing with our families, we're over there looking at the ceiling and just thinking, what the hell can be done? Because there's so many things that can be done. And it's just not.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that both of you guys have mentioned in this last 40 minutes that can be done. And it just seems like the strategy is only one. One extra thing that's been happening is they're giving the monoclonal antibodies Regeneron. I hear there's team 30 different healthcare providers. So that is one really helpful note, in that you can give it to those who are really at risk of, if they do contract it, getting into the hospital, and pretty effectively prevent them from getting very sick. So that's the other strategy. But it's typical of American healthcare at the moment, is that let's cure disease rather than prevent it. It costs a lot more to treat disease than to keep it from happening. And that's what I've tried to argue since the get-go, is like, let's just prevent this from spreading, and then we won't have to. I mean, what's the price to pay when you've got 12 people die per day? Like, how do you put a dollar figure on that? What's that worth? There was a great documentary, or not documentary, a Michael Keaton movie about 9/11, and it's called Worth. It's on Netflix, and it's all about how do you put a dollar figure on somebody's life. And it's specifically on the 9/11, the 3,200 or so people that passed away. And you can't really, you got to take it case by case. And what's it worth to us as a state,
I think that's the first question that I think about every day. I wait every day. I think I just wait every day for the reports to come out, which is a really horrible way to live. I should be enjoying life and not focused on the next state's report or the next Kauai report. But anyway, when I see 12 deaths, when I see so many kids getting sick, it does affect me. It does make me angry. It does make me ask that question to myself. I mean, at what point is a life going to matter to our policymakers? At what point? I mean, Lord have mercy. Imagine for a moment that if yesterday on the H1 freeway in a 3-mile stretch, 12 people died. In 12 separate accidents, 12 people died on the H1 freeway in one day. Or imagine if 12 people got sick and died after eating at a restaurant in any one of our islands one day. The shit would happen, right? I mean, it would be on the news from day to night. Things would get shut down. I mean, it'd be going nuts. Guys be writing tickets and fines, all these. But this one is just, 12 people died today. Another 12 deaths. Yeah, really? That 12 deaths, like you said earlier, Doc, each death is connected to a very huge ohana. And a lot of people suffering. It's crap. I want to go where, I hope you don't mind, but I got to ask this question, Doc. And it's about the alternative treatments. And let me preface my question with this real quick. We have seen, and I'm not talking about ivermectin horse picture on the box. I'm not talking about the veterinarian dosage. I'm talking about human dosages of ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, whatever. It could be anything. And I prefaced my question with this. And I said this story once before. My mom was at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota with kidney cancer, and they were getting ready to go in and operate. And the doctor called me up the night before surgery and said, "Hey, Mel, we think we want to try another treatment before we go into surgery tomorrow morning. And it's not approved by the FDA. It is not approved for what we want to use it for. But do you think your mom would be willing to try it? We think it's going to work. And of course, my mom said, yeah. And I agreed. And we signed all the papers. They tried the treatment. It worked. It shrunk the tumors to a point where they could actually get all those tumors out of her little kidney and gave her another 7 years of life. With all the discussion, and I see a lot of shit on the internet. I ain't talking about the idiots that are posting crap, but the legitimate questions about using human ivermectin, human hydroxy, whatever. That in fact, I personally know 2 doctors that are actually trying this on patients that have agreed on this experimental treatment. Is that something that someone in our federal government is looking into? Is that something that someone is at some point? I know the FDA came out and said, stop using it now. We get people overdosing on the horse medicine. But is that something is there a process for that to be used to get these types of medication, these types of drugs? I know Dr. Pang called it something off script or something. I can't remember what he was talking about. But
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, off label. I think
Off label.
I'll take hydroxychloroquine first, and I think the data is extremely robust and conclusive. It was included in numerous randomized controlled trials, right? And that's really a double-blinded randomized controlled trial. I'll break that down. That means the patient doesn't know what they're taking, nor does the physician know what they are giving them. And so double-blinded, and then also they're randomized to either getting the control placebo or the medicine, in this case, hydroxychloroquine. All of the randomized controlled trials, which is the highest level of evidence, right? It takes as much of the bias and confounders away in science as best as we can. All of those high level evidence studies for hydroxychloroquine came out that there was no benefit whatsoever in giving hydroxychloroquine at any point in the illness. And also possibility of doing harm. Hydroxychloroquine is in the one pill that can kill club, we nickname in toxicology circles, meaning that it's lethal enough that if a small child was to ingest it, it could kill them. So for those several reasons, hydroxychloroquine was not recommended. And I think it should still not be recommended. Regarding ivermectin, the only conclusive things that point to possible maybe efficacy are not randomized controlled trials, double-blinded randomized controlled trials. They're not at all. There was one meta-analysis, which basically takes small little studies and puts them together to try and create like a statistical power from them. And that's not very far from a randomized controlled trial. And it didn't show conclusive benefits either. And what actually pushed that trial over, or that meta-analysis over to looking possibly effective, was what turns out to be a very a falsified study out of Egypt, where somebody just cut and pasted a bunch of from prior studies regarding ivermectin. There was a lot of fallacies in the data. The more that people looked into it, the more it wasn't possible. Like they said that their study period was from January to May, but then some of their patients had died in December before the study even started. So like it just didn't add up. And so the final answer to your question is, are people studying it? And they are. In a REACT trial it's a long acronym for a trial where they're randomized controlled trialing and double blinding, and patients don't know that they're taking it. Physicians don't know that they're giving it. That data isn't out yet, but everything I've seen to date is painting out exactly like hydroxychloroquine. they help in the test tube. Hydroxychloroquine looked like it neutralized coronavirus and prior coronaviruses in the test tube, but it didn't translate to in humans, in animals. And I think ivermectin is probably going to end up being the same way. I would not trust it at this point. And the safety profile for ivermectin is a bit better than hydroxychloroquine. But why add something into your body that you don't know is actually working?
Yep.
Thank you,
Yep.
sir.
You know,
Try to ask everybody that same question. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
you know, listening to what you're saying about these blind studies, and then I was going to say something, but I think people take it that I'm too insensitive when I say it. But all I'm saying is there are a lot of things that's done, even in other professions, where only a certain group of people know what's being done, right? To see what the effects are. It can be building, it can be mixing cement. Nobody knows that or providing the right type of base for your aggregate. So when you pave the road, they don't know what goes into the mixture. Only that person that mixes it up in that tower, when he dumps that load into the back of a tractor trailer, and that's going to take it to the site. Only he knows. So I think what's becoming more prevalent is we got a lot of people jumping on the fact that, oh, this thing worked for this so-and-so person. And I think the way I read it is that, a few that may be success stories doesn't speak volumes. You need more, right? That's what you're saying, right? And I think a lot of times people get confused that they get a few success stories. But what about the ones that weren't successful? You need to include that into the story too. And then be a comparison there to see who's successful and who's not. And I think that's the sad thing, because we kind of like deter away from the subject matter, which is how do we keep ourselves safe from this variant? It seems to be getting so close now. I mean, you look at some people that've gotten sick and they've been asked, it says, I don't know where the heck I could have gotten it because I hardly go out. I've got my mask on. I keep social distancing. And so the thing is, you really got to be akamai and try to find out, where in the heck could you have breached something that got you into that dangerous zone, right? You try to keep into the safe zone. And, I don't know what the answer is, but, it seems like more and more, unless the person who did get sick, who is vaccinated, is not telling the truth, because they don't want to say, you know what, I went out boogieing the other night, but I knew I was vaccinated, but I never knew I was going to get tagged. And they just won't include that into the totality of the story itself.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of, when I've done contact tracing on patients, there's a lot of people where it just runs into dead ends. They just aren't truthful. And then, you can tell that they just don't want to talk about it. It happens. It's human nature, and you can't force them to. You can ask them and you can give them reasons why, but it happens. Then going back to your first point about anecdotes, right? That's what you're talking about. I heard somebody got better, right? Well, the plural of anecdotes is not science, right? That's just more anecdotes. There's no control under that. There's no science behind it. And I'd be really careful about following any anecdote, because some people might have got better anyway. A lot of people do just get better when they get COVID, right? But there's a significant portion who don't. But some of those people may have gotten better anyway, no matter if they took ivermectin or not. And so that's what a randomized double-blind control trial does, is it gets rid of anecdotes. And again, if I could stress anything about it, the plural of anecdotes is not science.
Good.
Charlie, remember when you was young and your parents wanted to make you eat spinach, and you couldn't stand the sight, the smell, or the taste of spinach, but they told you that if you ate that spinach, you was going to be strong. You was going to be like Popeye. You'd be able to, and after you ate that spinach, as bad as it tasted, all of a sudden you were stronger. You felt stronger because that's what you were told by somebody. Said, hey, the spinach will make you strong.
No.
Spinach.
No, because our house never had spinach. Growing up, my parents said, if you eat that vegetable, it's gonna taste like M&M's.
Oh, this guy never leaves
That's
home
how
without
I
it.
am.
This guy never leaves home without it. I'm like, what the heck? I gotta start drinking myself. I don't even have that kind of stuff in my house. I get oatmeal. I get oatmeal.
Oh, there you go with the oatmeal again. Oh boy.
Oh,
Hey, but if it's that maple brown sugar oatmeal, then it's pretty good.
oh
Yeah,
yeah. Well, gotta have some. That out of the box. Yeah, I remember this one time, real quick. I told we just went one of my episodes of wanting to eat healthy, and I went to the store and they had that real oatmeal, the kind in the cylinder, the kind you gotta really cook.
Quaker oat.
That's whatever brand it was. That's like the worst, nastiest taste. You cannot eat that without some kind of flavor. So yeah, now it's all the instant, the one that's loaded with sugar. That's so unhealthy.
No,
Yeah.
I used to use that one in the cylinder. Put them in one pillowcase, sew them up, and that be the fluffing in there.
I stand corrected. Brian Ingalls just corrected me.
Mm.
Chocolate is a plant. Plants are vegetables. Chocolate is a vegetable. Thank you, Brian. Good
That's
job,
why
Charlie.
we are all vegetarians. I eat meat. The cow eat grass. We vegetarians. There you go.
Hey, Doc. What's I'm almost afraid to ask, but where do we go from here? What's on the horizon if nothing changes? We saw the reports from Dr. Chiba and Haipam. We we know what's coming, right? Or we should know. If nothing changes in mitigation, where do you think we're going to be in a year? Or not even a year, 6 months?
6 months. If I had to guess, after Alpha came and cases actually started coming down in May, I think the consensus was that we were going to see something like Delta this fall or this winter, but it came a lot sooner than that. My guess is we've got flu coming up too. Flu, much less severe virus, much less contagious, but it does add to burdens in the hospital system, right? My fear is, and I think we should be planning for something that a variant that's going to be sweep through like Delta did sometime this winter or this fall, and not to. There is a mechanism by which if a Delta variant virus gets into a cell at the same time that, say, one of those common cold coronaviruses do, they could share genetic material. And there's a couple proteins that common cold coronaviruses have that has helped to escape immune responses that this coronavirus doesn't have. That's called a recombination event. And we do know that the common cold coronaviruses do that. We have evidence of it. There's no proof of this virus doing it, but it's theoretically capable. And so this flu season, when we've got a high volume, if we still have a high volume of coronavirus circulating and flu and the common cold coronaviruses, it's a recipe for possible bad things happening. It could not happen, but I don't think it's a gamble that we should prepare, that we can't prepare for. And it's a gamble is really what it is. And I don't agree with gambling. I don't like the gamble.
Hey, Doc, someone just asked, because you've always been honest with us. Tell us your true feeling about our schools. Do you think it's safe? I mean, I've gone in and disinfect classes here on Kauai. And I made mention a couple of nights ago on a show, when I went into the class, I looked at the setup and I don't see that separation that you would consider safe. So what's your honest opinion about our schools? Because if we know that this thing is tagging, I use the word tag, that means that it infects children at a rapid rate. Are schools safe? Because the superintendent seems to be seems to think, the interim superintendent seems to think that the schools are safe, but we're seeing the numbers. I mean, I don't know where he's getting his numbers from, but
Right.
the numbers, it doesn't look good. What do you think?
Yeah, no, one of the main variables that people factored into the earlier models, like in the beginning of the pandemic, was, are schools open and when did they close? I mean, with upper respiratory viruses, they're a huge potential and opportunity to spread. You've got 20, 30 students, sometimes more, in one room for an hour or more, half the day or the whole day. And so unless there's adequate masking, and I would promote and venture for KN95s. N95s are very uncomfortable to wear for a long time, and KN95s or KN94s, the Korean version, are a bit more comfortable and they filter more than a surgical mask. Unless those are being used, unless there's face shields, unless there's adequate ventilation, adequate spacing, and then at least the minimum every week testing, I would hope for even safer with twice a week, then I would not consider a school safe. No.
Good. Thank you.
Doc, we have had many of you on the show over the last year and a half, and we've seen the evolution of the virus. We've seen the evolution of government. We've seen the evolution of patients. We've seen just so many changes. And yet, the basic fundamentals of this virus hasn't really changed. The social distancing, the masking, the vaccination. I mean, all of these things pretty standard to keep people safe, and yet certain aspects of it go ignored, including the schools. I think what you just put out there, the twice a week testing, the masks, I mean, it just makes so much sense. And I just wish they would listen. I wish they would listen to the non-political, non-governmental experts. I think we'd be in a whole better place. We'd be in a different place today. We are, one last question. Flu shot, yes or no?
Yes, 100%, because you're going to think that you have coronavirus, and anything you can do to keep yourself from getting flu, like the flu vaccine, you should do it, because if you get sick enough, we haven't seen many patients that have both flu and coronavirus. I have seen case reports of flu and coronavirus and RSV. But flu plus coronavirus isn't something that you want to mess with.
Awesome. It's 2:08, Doc. Thank you so much. Give an opportunity to share a closing comment to our viewers about anything, about today's football game. Oregon beat Ohio State. How's that? That was bizarre. Anyway, that was just about anything, sir.
How did UH do? Did we beat Oregon State?
They're playing right now. They're playing right now. Yeah, everything is pay-per-view now. Jesus Christ. Yeah. I'll just say this: 11 minutes, 43 seconds left in the game. Not looking good.
Not looking good. Oh, all right. Next week, hopefully. Yeah, I apologize if a lot of what I had to say was I don't know, matter of fact, or just energy is down. But the hopeful news is that there's work on a universal vaccine. There's maybe an oral medication coming up. And I hope that as long as us, one single action, when you multiply that by however many people are watching this or are going to hear this, if you multiply that by that many people, is going to make a world of difference here in Hawaii. So as long as we continue to do the things that keep yourself, your family, and our community safe, it's going to make a large impact. So keep doing that.
Right on.
Awesome. Charlie.
As always, I'd like to say thank you to our good friend, Dr. Darragh O'Carroll. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I wish you all the best in your upcoming unity with the woman that you will take for the rest of your life. And I hope good things come out of it. Healthy family. And keep on, just talking the truth, because sometimes the truth hurts, but hey, it's got to be said, right? It's got to be said. So thank you. I want to thank you very, very much. You know, folks out there, today's sort of like a somber day only because it is September 11th, 20 years ago. But I'm just going to say this. I do not know why our schools or even our state, they can spend money on all kind of things, but why don't they want to spend money on tests? I mean, even if you get something as inexpensive as the Binex now, and you just load up on it, take it into the schools and do testing regularly, just so, you know, the parents can get an idea of how safe it is in school. Because I don't think there's anything that's being done to give a parent that comfort level. Because if they were comfortable, they wouldn't be asking the questions. But I've been noticing more and more now they're asking the questions. So if the state hears us, please, 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 spend a little, get us the test kits. And if you're too lazy to administer it, then teach some of us how to, how hard can it be just to use one of those test kits? I mean, it's not like we're gonna dig way in the back of their brain. I understand the Binex now doesn't do that. So, how hard is it? But I really think that we gotta do more testing, because right now we just don't know what direction. There's always an assumption made. It's a community spread. Well, even when you get shark attacks, they let you know where the damn shark is at. They let you know how far offshore it's at. Okay? This thing is floating around like the invisible man. Yet we know where it's at because we had a cluster. So jump on it right away. Don't wait until aid. Did anybody see where the cluster went or where it went at this point? No, we're too busy because we're the state, and they just let it go. And it got so out of control. And the sad thing is a lot of false information was given out. So when it became out of control, there was no way of reining it back in. And that's a sad thing. So I think we need to test the heck out of it until we get it to the point that it's manageable. That's the only way we're going to fight this thing. That's the only way we're going to fight this thing. Okay. So thank you very much, Mel.
Thanks, Charlie. One of the things that is troubling, and for Kauai especially, today wasn't as high, but yesterday our positivity rate was over 11%. That tells us that there's a lot of virus out there that, we should be testing more, you're right. In Kauai, and this is, our county has purchased those Binex tests, those rapid testing for all the departments. Remember when this all came down and, Honolulu is putting officers on leave without pay and going to fire them. Our county, if you choose not to get vaccinated, you have a test at your office, in your office. You just go to your supervisor and say, hey, I need a test because I'm not vaccinated. It's a self-administered 15-minute test that's done in the privacy and comfort of your own office. It's there. And so we're not seeing the problems like Oahu. But we need to make the testing available to everybody. And for those principals that are not opting in to the student testing, shame on all of you. That for the life of me, I cannot figure out why in the world a principal of a school would not want to get their students and staff tested. My two coworkers this past week, two of my coworkers got called to their respective kids' schools to pick their kids up because of close contact with a positive. I mean, it's happening a lot, and it's not going to stop. So I know the state, they hear us, they just choose not to listen. That's the difference. They hear all the experts. It's hard not to hear. They're everywhere. So I hope one day they wake up and they say it's time to start to be proactive and start doing some things that'll really drop the cases and the hospitalizations and the deaths here in Hawaii. So with that, thanks again. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
Quickly, if those of us who are pre-diabetic can test every day our sugar, why can't we test for this COVID?
Yeah. And why you have to pay so much for anyway. And so the doc earlier said, I forget how you said it. It doesn't, it's cheaper to treat. How did you say it? It's cheaper to treat.
Cheaper to prevent than to cure. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
But it costs a whole lot more, right? Because the cost of those medicines and stuff. But anyway, no here, no there. Thank you all again, Doc. Thanks again for jumping on. Like I said, if you need help with getting your wedding at a local luau, let me know. I know them. We can make it perfectly, or you do it, do it at a luau, at a hotel. No problem. No problem. And for our viewers, thank you very much for jumping on. I don't know what somebody just posted UH just scored, so it's not looking that bad. Maybe they got a chance. I hope so.
No, I got the final score right here. Got it right there. UH is leading Oregon right now.
Charlie, now you're starting to sound like one of our government leaders, bro. telling them they want to hear. We'll be back Monday night, folks. Take off tomorrow night. Enjoy your weekend. We love you guys. God bless. Take care. And let me find the right button.